Welcome back, let's just get right into this. You know the drill by now, we're rating all of the Arkham Knight side missions for better or for worse off 3 different categories out of 10. Gameplay, story, and difficulty. And at the end, these scores will be added together. 30 out of 30 is perfect, 0 out of 30 is awful. Easy enough. If you haven't, go and watch the 3 previous videos on Two-Faced Bandit, In From the Cold, and A Perfect Crime to see how they stack up. And let's get right into this. Subscribe, I'm pushing for 500 subs by the end of the year. It's a pretty big ask, but one that would mean the world to me. So if you like my funny little Batman videos, hit the red button, like and comment, and let's go. I'm so grateful for the support on my channel recently, so thank you for that. Killer Croc is a Batman villain who I love. He's just so Batman. A man whose fate was thrust upon him when he had no say in the matter, who's now forced to live out his day surviving in a world that simply doesn't want him. He's great. His design is cool 99% of the time, and he's my favourite Lego figure of all time. And he also played a part in scaring the ever-loving Jesus out of me as a child in Arkham Asylum. I have to admit, I was disappointed he only made a small appearance in the sequel to Asylum, Arkham City. It was nice to know he was still out there, but ultimately, as a Croc truther, I felt robbed. And so when he was added in Arkham Knight in the Season of Infamy DLC, my heart grew 3 sizes. I have my reservations about his design, I do know the lore reason, but quite frankly, his Asylum and City... Sorry. Is there a lore reason why Killer Croc is huge? I do know the lore reason, but quite frankly, his Asylum and City looks are his best ever designs, and I was heartbroken they mutated Mr. Jones into a bigger, meatier monster than before. He was one of the longer side missions in the Season of Infamy DLC, and one of the more thoughtfully crafted ones. So, let's take a deep dive into Gotham's Bay, and see how Croc stacks up to his challengers by talking about the story. The story begins with Nightwing telling Batman that the floating prison that is the Iron Heights Penitentiary has crashed off the coast of Gotham, and it's not looking good. Batman tells Dick to meet him there, and we head to the formerly floating prison. After entering Iron Depths Penitentiary, we get what I believe is one of the most atmospheric locations since Asylum. The prison itself is so cool to walk through. It carries that quintessential Arkham Asylum feel. Bodies strewn about the place, blood, fire, cages hanging from the ceiling. It's honestly great. I'm just going to let some gameplay play that I recorded when I was doing recording for this video, and it's just really cool. I don't know why I got so giddy over this, but I'll let that play now.
You shouldn't have come here, freak. You just got added to the menu.
Help me, Batman.
But we begin making our way through the wreckage and rescue guards who survived the crash. And one of them tells us that Waylon Jones, also known as Killer Croc, attacked the engines, hence the crash, and he's now on the loose. The guard also tells Batman that the Warden Rankin, is missing, somewhere nearby. And when Batman finds him trapped in what I can only assume was once an elevator maybe, Croc appears, bitch slaps Bat, and runs off with the Warden. And as Batman begins pursuing the Warden and Croc, he tells Nightwing to meet him at his location before being surrounded by prisoners. Luckily, Nightwing swoops in and the original Batman and Boy Wonder team up, take down the prisoners, and then head into the control room, where they find Prisoner Officer Blackburn, who tells the dynamic duo that the Warden was taken into the lower levels of the ship, but the door to said levels can't be opened without a dual-access keycard system. The only issue is, the only 2 men with said keycards bailed when the ship started going down. Of course they did. Batman heads out into the, as Alfred says, safety, quote-unquote, of Gotham, and tracks the pair down. One didn't make it, hanging by his parachute from a crane, and the other one is found being beaten up by Scarecrow's thugs, and after clearing them out, the officer is really reluctant to give Batman his card, telling him that when Batman gets down there, to remember that those who work there were only doing their jobs. Bit of a side note, but I really like this. On the glide back to the ship, you really begin thinking what actually is going down there, and this makes the initial reveal of what was happening to Croc when you get down there all that more disturbing. After getting back to the ship, Batman and Nightwing enter the lower levels and see what was going on in Iron Heights. Again, I'll let this scene play out for you because it's really good.
Track the subject back to its den, located beneath the Founders Island lighthouse. It suffered minor injuries during capture. Fortunately, wounds did not impede immediate testing. The creature's regenerative healing factor is quite remarkable. Superficial lesions can repair almost instantaneously, and the subject's hand is now fully regrown post-amputation. Further surgeries have been scheduled to see whether tissue growth can be accelerated. Human trials are underway. Stabilizing the recombinant DNA is our next step. We have lots of work ahead of us. As an aside, the subject's physiology is altering, possibly as an adaptive response to trauma. Sedatives are becoming less effective. Termination, although undesirable, must be considered.
They discover through video diaries that the team at Iron Heights, and more specifically Warden Rankin, were experimenting on Crocs and the prisoners to try and weaponise Croc's accelerated healing factor and use it on people. And to do this, they cut off his limbs, sedated him and tortured him, all in the pursuit of this twisted experiment. The dynamic duo then come to the realisation they've been after the wrong guy. Obviously Croc needs to face justice for the murders he's committed, but the real villain here is Rankin. So when Batman and Nightwing find Croc threatening to kill Rankin after strapping him to the same chair Rankin would torture Croc in, they jump in and fight Croc and the inmates surrounding him, who are also victims of the experiment. After a lengthy fight, the dynamic duo take down Waylon Jones and the inmates, and Batman interrogates Rankin and tells him quite rightly that he's the real monster here, not Croc. And in an ironic twist of fate, when Croc, the inmates and Rankin are taken to GCPD, the disgraced warden is locked up with his former inmate and in a cell right next to Croc, bringing the whole arc wrapped up into a neatly wrapped bow. So as far as Killer Croc stories go, I think this is one of the better ones. In a similar vein to Batman Earth 1, Croc is painted as a sympathetic villain rather than a monstrous hulking beast, and I think the story does this really well. And if anyone's got any suggestions of other really good Killer Croc stories, tell me, because I really like Killer Croc. He's one of my favourite villains. I don't know why. I think it was Arkham Asylum that got me into Killer Croc. But obviously in this story, Croc isn't completely in the right. He's killed people. He's ruined a prison. Like, he's put people out of jobs. He's a bad guy. But he's not the main villain here. Rankin is. I think this story is really cool. It's not perfect and it's fairly short, as are most of the side missions in the Season of Infamy DLC. But overall, I think it's good, it's unique, its set designs are some of the best in the game in my opinion, and it takes advantage of the Waylon Jones side of Killer Croc, which is something I don't think we see enough of. And for all those reasons, I'm going to bestow a healthy 8 out of 10 onto Beneath the Surface, and move on. In summary, it's good, original, and I like it quite a lot. It's not perfect, but it's cool, so let's see how the gameplay stacks up, shall we? Beneath the Surface's gameplay is about as Arkham as it gets. It begins by travelling to a location, helping some people, combat, glide, vents, combat. And in all honesty, it's fine, I'm not knocking it. The combat in this game is the best it's ever been in the Arkham series, so the fact that there's plenty of it is always a bonus. And you will never hear me take away points from anything for letting us beat people up using the free flow combat system. The variety of combat is good too. We get to use the dual team system twice throughout this mission, which is fun, and getting to see Batman and Nightwing fight side by side is cool, and it adds to the immersion of the game, because it feels like, despite the fact you play primarily as Batman throughout the story, Batman isn't all alone in Gotham, and it's great to be able to see further the dynamic between Bruce and Dick as the mission gets further along. As I said earlier, the combat in Arkham Knight is basically a perfected system when it comes to the free flow combat, and this mission line we get a ton of it, with plenty of depth in how you deal with the thugs, and the added factor of Nightwing being around makes this mission's combat feel unique, and obviously it's always fun to be able to kick ass as not one, but two different members of the Bat family. The final combat section is also really cool. This is the second time you actually have a fist fight with Croc in the Arkham series, the first being back in Origins, and although his fight in Origins was a glorified tutorial, it really always used to stick out to me, and the same can be said for this fight. Not that this one is a glorified tutorial, but the fact it's memorable, and I think it cements Croc's legacy as one of the most underrated Arkham characters, because in my humble opinion, it's genuinely quite good, and Croc goes 3 for 3 in the memorable boss fight category. And I don't think that gets mentioned nearly enough. I'd be really interested to hear your guys' opinions on Croc in the Arkham series, because I feel like he never gets a bad outing particularly, but he never gets a overly amazing one. But anyway, the boss fight against Croc is pretty cool, and it's very reminiscent of the fight against Albert King in the movie studios. Croc takes a few dual team takedowns to, well, take down, and as far as this goes, it's quite cool seeing Batman and Nightwing work together to take out Croc over time. And the added factor of Croc being able to revive the thugs around him by just kind of picking them up is pretty cool. It doesn't feel too out of character for Croc to just force these guys back on their feet to try and stop the dynamic duo, and I think overall this boss fight is cool. And you can hit Croc with the most dangerous 3 letters in all of sports entertainment, an RKO. And that is really cool, because Randy Orton is a legend. A little feature I do like is that, much like usual thugs, you can actually dodge over and under Croc depending on his stance. And this can help create some separation between you and Jones as the fight goes on. And it's a nice little attention to detail. There isn't much more to this mission in terms of gameplay. The mission requires you to find 2 guards of Iron Heights in Gotham, which, if doing it for the first time, can be tricky, but upon repeat playthroughs, it's kind of just an inconvenience and that's about it. Overall, I think the gameplay is pretty standard for Arkham games as we've come to expect them. The combat is fun, and the fight against Croc is pretty cool, and it's by far the most in-depth fist fight we have with Croc, and easily his second best outing after the sort of hunter versus hunted dynamic got reversed in the Asylum. I also love the dual team gameplay, and it's fun to get more interactions on the combat side of things with the original Boy Wonder and the Dark Knight of Gotham. This gameplay is fun, the boss fight is good, and the overall vibe of the mission is good. And so for all of that, Beneath the Surface gets a respectable 7 out of 10. But how hard is this mission and the gameplay in general? Well, let's see. You get the drill by now, we're 3 videos in. We're going to be basing the difficulty out of 10. 1 is easy, 10 is hard, and we're using a baseline of a person who's played all the Arkham games once on hard, isn't overly great at the games, and likes to dabble in the Arkhamverse every now and then. And so for this episode, joining our difficulty alumni characters from previous videos, say hello to the Lizard. It only seemed right that we got Dr. Connors in on this episode, being the other highly recognisable, underrated lizard-based villain in comics. Things have been hard for Dr. Connors since the whole losing of the arm situation, and so the only time he can actually play these games is when he's the Lizard, which is pretty hard considering he's like 10 feet tall and his hands are like 8 times the size of the controller, but he gets by. Anyway, let's see how hard this mission is. The hardest part of this mission, in my opinion, is hunting down the 2 guards who fled the ship when it crashed. The first one in particular. This still isn't really hard, but it's challenging on a first playthrough if you don't know exactly where you're looking. The first victim is harder because the second victim is surrounded by thugs, so he's a lot easier to find in detective mode. The other big talking point is the final boss fight against Croc, but in all honesty, I can't say this is particularly hard. It's challenging at points and Croc can charge at you, which I know caught me off guard a few times when I was locked in on keeping my combo up. The actual taking down of Croc is easy, and at this point in the story you'll have already done it before. It's as simple as a few dual team takedowns, followed by some well timed punches and counters. The thugs surrounding Croc don't provide too much of a challenge either. There isn't a huge amount of variety in their weapons or armour, and this really just serves as a way to build your combo up for the dual team takedowns to get Croc down. There really isn't much going on here outside of combat. The combat is easy in the other sections and doesn't really warrant a mention. It's simple Arkham combat and it remains fun and feels good. Overall, Beneath the Surface is fairly easy, and Lizard over here wouldn't see this as a big challenge as he does actually just playing the game due to his enlarged claws. And although this section has been really short, there just isn't that much to mention it, and for that reason, for difficulty, Beneath the Surface gets a lackluster 5 out of 10. Overall, Beneath the Surface serves as a final good send-off for everyone's favourite mutated crocodile, and despite its fairly easy nature, it manages to make Croc feel like more of a poorly treated human than a bloodthirsty mutant, and I think this is great. The story of this mission is much better than the gameplay. Although the gameplay isn't bad, it would have been nice, and I'm just dreaming here, I'm not a game designer, to maybe have a callback to his Asylum boss fight where we'd have to sneak around the ship at one point or he'd jump out at us and rip our ears off. Saying all that, I do really like this side mission. I like the sort of atmosphere it gives in the prison. I like the feeling of you hunting down Killer Croc, which is obviously a complete 180 from when he was hunting you down. And for that reason, it's been given a total of 20 out of 30 when all the scores are combined together. It's a little lackluster for Wayland's final outing in the Arkhamverse thus far, but it's still a fairly respectable score. Thank you so much for watching. The support on these videos has been insane, and there's so much more to come. In the future, between about now and December, we have an Arkham Knight I Am the Night run where we restart the story if we die, a Halloween special retrospective of one of the other Arkham games, which I'm sure you can figure out, an Origins retrospective over the holiday period, and of course the rest of the side mission rankings for Arkham Knight are still to come. So there's a huge amount of content coming, and you guys keep me motivated to do all that, so thank you. Like I said in the beginning, we're aiming for 500 subscribers for the new year, and although it's a long way away, it would be amazing if we could get to that. So subscribe if you enjoy the Arkham videos, because as I said, there's a lot more on the way. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time when we go down the rabbit hole. Goodbye.